President Trump's premature claim of victory and false allegations of voter fraud this week drew expressions of disbelief over the conduct of U.S. democracy. People around the world watched with a mixture of apprehension and dismay as the United States elections seemed mired in divisive claims and possibly a very protracted legal battle. And joining us now to discuss whether the United States can still be considered the global policeman of democratic practice is UCT Associate Professor of Public Law Richard Calland and Professor Christopher Isike from the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria. Good evening and thank you so much for your time tonight. Professor Calland, I'll start with you. We saw quite a dramatic turn of events this afternoon. Joe Biden, now leading in Pennsylvania, and then another dramatic turn of events as well. Georgia saying that, they are now going to be recounting. It certainly does say that, the stakes are high and everybody wants to make sure that this process is above reproach.
Yes, thank you and good evening. It's been a long week, a roller coaster. For those of us who are electoral fundies and addicts, so to speak, it's been almost a sleepless week. And it's been slow burn. But I think for about 36 hours at least, if not 48 hours, it's been clear that Biden would win, that the prevailing travel in key battleground states such as Georgia and Pennsylvania were heading in very tight, but in the end it's going to be a decisive victory. Of course, one of the peculiarities of the American system is that the Electoral College makes it look closer than it is. At the moment, Biden is 4 million votes ahead in the popular vote. That's to say, the overall vote across the country. But the Electoral College makes it much tighter than that. And one of the reasons, I think, why American democracy has been tested in terms of its legitimacy is precisely that rather antiquated approach to how it organizes its elections. Plus, lastly, 51 states and 51 different ways of counting the votes, different electoral systems within that system.
Now, Prof Isike, when you look into the nature, you've seen the Trump camp filing lawsuits in various states. And just yesterday, there was one of those lawsuits was actually thrown out in Georgia, and there it looks like it was based on evidence by a Democrat who says that he did not know whether a pile of 53 ballots had been received on time. And when people are looking at this, they actually saying that some of these cases seem a bit trivial. What does that say about the Trump campaign as it challenges these results coming out?
Well, it's marks of desperation. There's a lot of desperation we see on the part of Donald Trump, and this desperation was signaled from the very night of the elections when he came out to say that he was winning, and suddenly things stopped and he was no longer winning. It's emblematic of someone who is not very confident, and he knew all along and has been kicking against, mail-in ballots for over 3 months before the election. So that for me signified that he knew exactly what was coming and had been prepared. So we shouldn't really be surprised because everyone was, told sufficiently, at least on the Democrat side, that the results were not going to be straightforward. They were not going to be known within, 24 hours of voting. So it shouldn't really be a surprise. But when we have the President of the United States, the supposed leader of the free world, a country that has been known for advancing democratic values, and, equality, justice, freedom, human rights all over the world, now, it's displaying elements of doubt and sowing seeds of discord and mistrust in its own electoral system. It leaves much to be desired. And actually, to answer your initial question of whether this makes America a good example, the answer is definitely no. There is no reason now we should take lectures from America about how to conduct elections, how to be democratic, when they themselves have not, removed the speck from their own eyes. I mean, just talking about the logistics of election management, India conducted elections, and within 8 hours, we were able to count 600 million votes. Right? In America, we're talking about 140 million votes, and it has taken us, 4 days now counting, and still we don't know a winner. It's absurd.
And Professor Calland, if I can, bring you back into this conversation, when you look at what has been said, particularly around the Democrats and the difficult road ahead, should Joe Biden be pronounced the President of the United States, the difficulties they're going to be having in Senate, it does look like they might just battle to pass some legislation there. Is this not going to then create a lame duck presidency for Joe Biden?
Yes, it's a good question to pose. I think it's too soon to be talking about a lame duck presidency. I think when you've had someone like Trump in office, a maverick, as we know, anything is going to be better. And even if Biden is a moderate, which I think he will be, and even if he's a one-term president, which I also think he will be, all of that is going to appear like a sober, calm morning after a wild, drug-filled night before. And I think it's that sobriety and that moderation which is probably needed at the moment. And it will enable the United States to resume its role in international relations as potentially a respected partner, certainly in terms of multilateral engagement and things like the Paris Agreement on climate change action. Very, very important that the United States is part of that. But back to your original question, I think of the two political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, I think it will be the Republicans, ironically, who will be regarding themselves as having the better election. Why? Because they may well have held on to the Senate, although events in Georgia may yet make that a questionable proposition. There may be a runoff for 2 seats in Georgia in January, which could yet tip the balance of power in the Senate. But that is as it may be. I think that overall the Democrats will be asking themselves much harder questions in the aftermath of this election. Why did they not get the landslide that they'd hoped for? Why have they not won back a convincing majority in the Senate? Given the conditions in the country, given this mad president, given COVID-19, given the economic crash that has resulted, all of those prevailing conditions should have helped the Democrats, and yet they haven't been able to exploit that. And they will be asking themselves hard questions about that in the future, even though Biden, their candidate, has won the White House.
Now, Professor Calland, let me come back to you. In your initial comments, you spoke about how the Electoral College system kind of skews the picture. Now, going back to that, I mean, some people have said that looking at the Electoral College system, it actually, and also the standoff that you see now, it paints or it points to a dysfunctional democracy in America. But then, by the same token, you've had the highest voter turnout. And I would argue, though, that it's always a good measure of a state of a democracy, would you not?
Well, I think the turnout reveals the fact that on both sides there is a real ardency of support. Trump's people are clearly very loyal to him. He has a strong base there. Equally, the Democrats were able to get people out to vote who clearly sat on their hands in 2016 and cost Hillary Clinton her electoral chances there, her presidency. This time, probably because of Trump, probably because of a desire to get rid of Trump, Democrats have been able to mobilize, but not in quite the numbers that could have been expected, in the sense they haven't won over Trump voters. They've merely got their people out, and that's why it's been perhaps closer than many people expected, certainly the pollsters in certain parts of the country. On the first part of your question, yeah, the Electoral College, I think no one really can articulate the original reason for it, other than to say that smaller states need to have a bigger voice in the overall decision. And if it's such a big country, and if it's simply every vote in one big barrel, then smaller states will lose their voice. Well, on the other hand, with this system, every vote is not equal, in fact. Some votes count for more. And you do get the situation where for example, let's take California, big Democratic state, a Republican vote there is almost a wasted vote. And there are states the other way around. So I think the Electoral College is out of date, it's antiquated, few people understand it, and it's used by Trump and others to kind of chip away at the legitimacy of the process.
And Professor Isike, when you look at, the tradition that we have seen over the years, that would be, the candidate that knows that they have lost the election, they come out, they make a speech to concede, and of course congratulate the incumbent president. Do you think we could see that here?
Well, it's unlikely if we're to learn anything from Trump's antecedents, even from the 2016 election. Remember, he had said that he would only concede if he won the election. Luckily, he won the election in 2016 and did not have to concede. In this instance, he has not conceded. A reasonable person, a reasonable president, given American history, would have considered, by yesterday, considering the way that Biden was catching up very quickly in Pennsylvania, the way that Biden was leading in Arizona, as well as his lead in Nevada. Any of those would easily give him the 270 electoral college votes that are needed. But the fact that Trump has not, and has instead, in a typical banana republic fashion, resorted to litigating, even when there has not been any credible evidence presented that would reasonably impact the outcome of the elections, he has gone ahead to keep doing that, and even calling on Republicans, like we heard from one of his children do, and then the very next hour you had people like Lindsey Graham, coming out to show support. So for me, it's not just a problem of Donald Trump. It is something that is emblematic of the fixtures or the cleavages that are inherently playing out in American politics today. And this did not start in 2020. It's been there. It's been there for a very long time. Trump only gave these fixtures voice, a strong voice, and a lot of people are coming out to express them. And that's why I've said, I've commented separately before now, that this election is not about the character of the president, the presidential candidates themselves, in this case Biden or Donald Trump, but about the character of the American voter in terms of what they choose to continue to advocate in terms of either democracy, good governance, human rights, freedom and equality. These are values that America was founded on, and these are values that America sold to the world after, the Second World War that heralded its world leadership. So right now, there are those who are divided between these values and not having them at all. And I think that this is what is at play. And at the bottom of all of this is an inherent and incipient fear of being overridden in the system. And I think that those are divides, those are cleavages that Biden needs to, address going forward.
All right, it certainly does look like it's going to be a difficult road ahead. Thank you so much for your time tonight. That is UCT Associate Professor of Public Law, Richard Calland, and Professor Christopher Isike from the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria.